The gang member received only a misdemeanor charge, and the undercover officer was not happy about it. The perp had beaten the charge before, due to not being given his Miranda warnings, and his vandalism, plus being caught with a 9mm pistol and 27 cartridges that were stolen. That constituted a deadly weapon and didn't help at all. The Vice Squad came in with several charges of prostitution, and a revolver has ammunition in its cylinder. The coroner found the cause of death to be the fact that he had been tossed while intoxicated, but the trooper was kind of ambiguous about the DUI charge. He did not think that it was murder. At that time, a politician stepped in and he lowered the charge from felony to Class A misdemeanor, and he was put on probation. The suspect had a fake driver's license. The state trooper called in the SWAT group with their automatic weapons. The perp had a history of murder and manslaughter, but in this case he only had a handgun and was acting like a junkie. Yet, the handgun was a 9mm semi-automatic. But finally he was placed under arrest and charged with robbery and evasion of arrest. The addict called the dispatcher, and a police officer was dispatched. The suspect was charged with assault and battery, which in some states is only battery. He had taken a hostage several years ago. Now, the convict had nothing in his holster, and the police lieutenant had a 9mm trained on him and was in hot pursuit, with the intention to incarcerate him. After the arrest of the punk alcoholic, he was charged with kidnapping in the first degree. The pursuit of the juvenile began. The detective brought the alcoholic beverage to the police department as evidence in the case. There were several policemen there, and he also had a pistol in the bag when they heard a siren. The prostitute was released from the jail. Jails and prisoners are considered to be punitive, and those that perpetrate crimes are called perpetrators. Whether they have a DWI, a DUI, or an OWI, they might be pulled over for drunken driving, for speeding, and they can go straight to jail. Even politicians have been sent to jail for DWI. A police commissioner turned on his siren when he heard there was an aggression against a police officer and bullets fired. The state trooper asked the driver of the vehicle to take a breathalyzer test since he had exceeded the speed limit. The man was carrying a semi-automatic handgun, and the trooper asked for his driver's license number. While the other officers were at a crime scene, they found a beaten man with a concealed revolver who soon died. So it turned into a homicide. The aggressor became the subject of a massive manhunt search, and no misconduct was identified. The suspect and his accomplice were put in handcuffs, handcuffed, and taken away, past walls with vandalism. They found that a temporary restraining order had been filed against him for having beaten his wife. He was tossed after being found with a weapon. It was a motorist violation, but junkies and narcotics, not assault and battery or tasing, were first on his mind. After the arrest, Police arrived at the crime scene and found a man on probation who had no driver's license or identification. Later it was found he was a convict and had been the aggressor towards a deputy driving a cruiser. The man had a concealed .380 on him. It was either a .25 or .22 caliber, possibly a .380, and also a .45. In the back of the car were a 12-gauge and 20-gauge shotgun. The guns that ballistics showed were part of a murder scene. A narcotics deputy had 2 witnesses in incarceration that would testify. He didn't know if he would be charged with murder or manslaughter, having 2 felonies on his record, and a concealed sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun. Law enforcement claims he resisted arrest, and there were witnesses. He was charged with possession of narcotics and marijuana, as well as grand larceny, possession of a 12-gauge shotgun, a conceived .25 caliber pistol, a .38 caliber revolver. And he had an accomplice who was charged with misconduct. He also had a misdemeanor on his record. The assault was with a 9mm pistol, automatic pistol, or semi-automatic. He had served alcoholic beverages to minors. The bullets were found by ballistics to have been used at the crime scene, and witnesses place him at the burglary site, being a burglar, and he committed larceny. The man called 911 and then went to the police station, so dispatch sent an officer to the scene. He returned with a suspect who was placed in a lineup. In the lineup were a murderer and a robber, but the suspect was picked out of 8 people for having tossed someone. This was a violation of his probation and turned it from misdemeanor to a felony. The gun found was a .45 semi-automatic, and the accomplice was captured. Marijuana was found on him. He was charged with misconduct and possession. During the burglary, an alarm went off. Police showed up at the scene with backup, and a warrant was issued. The state trooper stopped a motorist who had a proper concealed carry license, and he was given a warning for speeding. Later in the day, the officer assisted to make a lineup so that a witness could identify a junkie who was jacked up on cocaine. He had committed grand larceny to pay for his addicting habit. The coroner found the bullet had torn cartridge in the man's chest, but not broken any ribs. The police report indicated the captain had found ammunition on the suspect. He was charged with possession of a deadly weapon on his person. Heroin was found in little baggies, and the perp was incarcerated. A policeman was happening by when he saw a suspect in the process of burgling a dwelling while he was on patrol, and he moved in with extra ammunition in his magazine. The suspect ran, but the officer ran him down, and law enforcement charged the suspect with violation of his probation and burglary of a dwelling, a felony, and a misdemeanor. The police officer placed his hand on his handgun until the motorist stepped out of his vehicle, whereupon the officer checked him for intoxication, administering to him a breathalyzer test. The sheriff deputy determined that he was resisting arrest and was both intoxicated and an addict. After it was stolen again, a warrant was issued for his arrest, and the entire precinct was searching for the deadly weapon. The former accomplice was found murdered, having been kidnapped, and a search warrant was issued by a judge. The entire police department aided the narcotics squad, as well as the SWAT team, when the suspect was again on the radar. The officer found 2 handguns, 2 pistols in the back seat, one of them a .45. The sheriff, who at the time was testifying on the commission, ordered surveillance teams to keep an eye on the burglary suspect and his accomplices. The narcotics team worked undercover to have a controlled buy-and-order entrap the suspect. The driver's license is here, with its driver's license number. The officer found probable cause to search the vehicle, asking his sergeant whether a warrant needed to be issued. He read the Miranda warnings to the occupant of the vehicle. He found a .22 caliber pistol as well as .22 ammo under the passenger side and in the glove compartment, along with baggies of marijuana and cocaine, with 50 cartridges of .45 ammunition as well. Each of the gang members had felonies on their records and numerous misdemeanor counts. That detective himself broke the speed limit trying to get to the scene of the accident, along with other law enforcement, such as Sheriff Jones, other deputy sheriffs, and the coroner, who performed an autopsy. Police officers charged a prostitute with murder today after she had tossed a man and stabbed him several times. She claims she was beaten first and it was self-defense. She was intoxicated at the time, and a kilo of heroin was found in her car. He was placed under oath. Determined to be under the influence, the captain and the sergeant charged the deputy with manslaughter, which got the homicide department involved. Surveillance showed an accomplice carrying a .45 automatic and narcotics crossing the street, and law enforcement 911 police officers were in pursuit.